Hi everyone, I'm Gary Tucker. Welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. In this week's episode, we're looking at a busy kitchen scene. This is a scene from a famous restaurant along the North Shore in Boston. I'm doing this scene because I have a fascination with a kitchen activity. I love to see the back and forth, the pots and pans, steam, all sorts of fun stuff. In this painting, we're going to start with a simple tonal sketch, but this gives us a good and important orientation to do a more colorful version. I've included below a PDF file that I think will be helpful to understand the steps in my process. So let's pick up our brushes, head over to the watercolor table, and get started. The midtone is the big choice, how dark to make it, where to use it. So really, he's the main subject. Okay, let's tape down a piece of paper. We're going to continue our work with figures. And I was thinking of an image that would work for showing you how to do figures light against dark. On our beach scenes, we were practicing dark figures against a light background. I like working this way. It's a little more fluid. When we try to create light figures against a dark background, we do have to cut around. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are some things to keep in mind. I think one of the things that helps me is to make sure the figures are large enough. If we're cutting around tiny, tiny little things, that becomes problematic. So let's set this up in the drawing to where we're working with good sized figures. For this, I'm choosing an image from one of our local fish shacks. Called Woodmans. One thing you notice at just glancing at the image is that there's a lot of complications and our figures are dark, but we're going to change that. We're going to make them a little lighter. We're going to look for some ways to simplify the scene. There's a couple of things that I do like about it. One is the kind of countertop that's set up. And there's a little bit of signage here that I like to include. I think it's going to be nice, authentic, make our work look authentic. We want to leave enough room for the figures. So I'm making this opening where we see the chefs in the background. We'll make them a little bigger too. Main figure here. More countertops. So you see how big I'm making this figure, bigger than the image shows. That's to make it two things. One, a little easier to create for us. Two, makes it feel more intimate. We feel go right on top of the
the scene, and that's good. And I'm going to put an anxious customer, probably myself, waiting for my order. I'll give you a little background about Woodmans. It's a typical, in one sense, it's a clam shack up on the North Shore of Boston. They have one of the busiest locations that I've ever seen. And it's not always a favorite of the locals. There's other places, but it's just so busy all the time that I think it's discouraged some of the locals from going there. They claim to have invented the fried clam. They sit on an estuary that's just beautiful, salt marsh, and I think this is one of the main reasons that they have such great tasting seafood. Put our figure there. So I made the figures bigger, made the opening a little bigger. I want to be able to want to make sure I can write my letters in here, pick up order. Opening. Maybe a good idea just to let this anxious customer sort of almost intruding on their space. Let's not make them too big. Signage. I might not even end up putting that customer, I don't know yet. There's a little bit of perspective here that gives us an idea of our relationship. We're pretty much eye level with our chef, who's got a plate of something here. Some plates and other stuff on the counter. Okay, I'll put the anxious customer just off to the side here, gazing in. I think it is helpful to see that because we identify with that customer. He's trying not to seem overly anxious. And we have 4 figures, maybe one more in the background because it's a busy place, a very busy place. Then we have all kinds of things hanging, pots and pans, ladles, plates. How much are we going to put in? Well, that's going to be sort of the fun part, I think, is finding a pattern that we can repeat and create these figures. So our figures are going to be light. So we're going to give them, white shirts. And going to be casting a shadow down. The light's coming from above, down his shirt. This figure is large enough to think about putting some features. And I guess I should make it easy for us and some sort of representative use some sort of figure that's close to what we're seeing. That's what I'm trying to say. Except that we're going to make his shirt white. Casting a shadow down the shirt, a little bit of a belly, apron. The other figure's a little easier, looking away. And we'll put the apron across the front, some pants that we barely see, apron, another white shirt, another white shirt, this one maybe doing dishes. And we'll see if this other figure comes out as well, kind of moving across the scene. I'm going to put myself and you can put yourself too. Maybe that's a good project. Put yourself into the painting. Of course, you should take the full opportunity to flatter yourself. All right, this is just a study and I'm getting a little over involved here. But it's good practice, so I'm going to be casual by putting my hand in my pockets, just kind of watching what he's doing there. Stuff on the counter, always important to put lots of stuff on the counter. Plates, boxes, because it's a busy place. My edge of my counter is coming right here. So it's mostly counter that we see there. I think that's good. So that's the drawing. So what we want to do, the goal here is to, in this sketch, think about the midtone actually. We know where we're going to use white, light colors. I have an idea where I'm going to use darks against my lights. I mean, some of the features, a small amount. The midtone is the big choice, how dark to make it, where to use it. And so I'm going to show you a way to approach that and think about our midtone in really most simple terms to start with. Because we're not simply copying the photograph, we have to make some creative decisions about how to avoid the confusion that's there. And we're going to use tonal values, lights and darks, to help us avoid that confusion and make it a little more clear what we're painting. All right, so I'm mixing up that midtone, looking for a good consistency. And I'm going to be isolating the figures, which will remain white. The midtone is going to be basically across all of this. So I'm going to start to build up now. I'm using leftovers. I have some neutral tint right next to some sepia. So you'll notice a warm color to that. And what I need to think about is how dark to go with this color. We're doing an interior, sort of a dramatic scene. We might even think of it like a stage or something. Let me use a little bigger brush here. So the level of darkness is maybe going to be, our midtone is going to be a little darker. Let's just get this going here. Cut across my figure. Figures, plural. I'm still not sure I'm going to use all of them, but in fact, I'm going to paint this without using this. This guy I will use, but he's going to be darker. Bring it right down to the counter. Couldn't hear my stomach because I'm already dreaming about having something to eat at Woodmans. You see some scattered lights back there. You can leave them. Basically, I want to get this sort of dark presence above, running into some lights and accents below. Then I'm going to paint some things on the counter, the reflections. It could be a box of clams. Could be some boxes of other seafood or dispensers of some sort. I'm not really being too careful about this. I'll put a little plate here, something on it. The hand and our chef. Let's put some reflections, shadows on the counter. Of course, a reflection from our chef. Boxes, plates. all manner of things. Just make a little study. This is the cast shadow coming down, some folds in the cloth. Something on the plate. So really, he's the main subject. Finish off the counter, finish off this corner. And let's think where we're going to put. So this is the midtone as I see it. This is the midtone. Let's put some darks into this that are going to perhaps make our figure a little more lively, give us some indication where we can use darks. For example, behind the counter, there's another countertop. The figure is wearing some pants. I would say anything that sort of comes out of the defining the counter, or things that are nearby the subject that bring the focal point a little closer. Perhaps we do the sign above too. Let's put some shelves back here. Those will just be the lines of perspective. Going back into the kitchen. Could be some of the overhead racks or things hanging, ladles. There's lots of stuff we can include back there. Let me just draw my sign so I can see it. Which makes this whole thing feel a little more authentic when we see the sign. So let's paint some of that sign to get an idea of what we want to do. I'm just going to paint some of the darker parts of the sign first. See how those look. If you're a sign painter, that's great because this will be right up your alley. And remember, we can still do some things with lights too. later on. Some highlights. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for in this, is to get an idea of how I'm going to use the lights and darks in this painting. Pick up. There's a much more professional way to go about this. One thing we should know is when we put letters into a scene, no matter what it is, this becomes a real attraction. So sometimes I just do them without really spelling anything, just sort of strokes. Give this character some hair. Make it feel like he's bending over and really into the work. Okay. One more place I might use darks is in my figure. This figure. He's not going to really read as a major figure. It's not in the spotlight, so to speak. We might not even include him. It might be completely irrelevant. Anyway, we kind of join to the side here, just peering into the kitchen, joining the mid-tone that we've created. Okay, so 3 tones basically focused on the light figures of our subject, the mid-tone, which is accounting for probably 80% of the painting, a few lights, important lights to carry the eye through the painting. These are joined to our figure left and right. And then a dark, which kind of brings everything together, holds everything together. Let's work on our character a little bit. We'll just lead that into the shadow. So that it's not too Sort of like that. We might use a dark to paint whatever is on the plate. Okay. So this is the tonal sketch, a simplified version of our painting that we're going to try today. And let's look at it and remember what we're trying to do in this sketch. We're not trying to make a finished painting. We're trying to take the photograph and extract something that we can use. The main figure, the peripheral figure, the signage, the clutter in the background, the countertop. These are things we can use. In the photograph, all that stuff is competing with everything. So it's very hard to make sense of what's going on visually. We can find little bits and pieces, but here we're making it more obvious, a little more dramatic, still giving us that sort of local quality and building from there.